Have you ever wondered why it's so easy to keep promises to others, yet so hard to keep the ones you make to yourself? Maybe you once started learning English with passion, but gave up when nothing seemed to change. But what if a small daily promise could change everything? Today, I'll tell you a story from Denmark, where one old promise still keeps a man's heart alive, just like the very first day. A cold morning in Copenhagen. It was one of those mornings when Copenhagen felt like it was holding its breath. The sky was pale gray, the streets were quiet, and the kind of cold that sneaks through your coat made every step feel slower. I was waiting for the bus, my hands buried deep in my pockets, when I noticed an old man standing a few feet away. He wasn't checking his phone, or pacing impatiently like most people. He just stood there, perfectly still, looking at the horizon. There was something about him, not sadness exactly, but a calm that came from somewhere far deeper. His wool scarf was neatly folded, his hands clasped behind his back, and his eyes fixed on the faint light peeking through the clouds. The bus stop sign rattled in the wind, but he didn't move. When the bus arrived, I climbed in. But he didn't. He stayed there, nodding politely to the driver as if to say, "Go on without me." I watched him through the window, confused. Why wait for a bus you never intend to take? The next day, he was there again. Same time. Same stop. Same stillness. Curiosity got the better of me. I walked over and said hello in slow, simple English, hoping he would understand. To my surprise, he smiled and replied fluently, "Good morning. You're early today." His voice was soft, warm, the kind that feels like it's been aged by kindness. I asked if he was waiting for the bus. He shook his head gently. "No," he said, "I'm waiting for the sunrise. My wife and I used to watch it together from this spot. She's gone now, but I still come. I promised her I would." For a moment, the world went quiet. The wind, the traffic, even my thoughts. Just an old man, keeping a promise no one asked him to keep, except love itself. The quiet man and his promise. The next morning, I went back, not because I needed to take the bus, but because I needed to understand. And there he was again, standing exactly where he always stood, as if time had forgotten to move him. The air was colder that day. Frost painted the benches silver, and our breath turned to fog as we spoke. That he greeted me with a smile that looked both new and ancient at once. "You came back," he said. I nodded. "I wanted to hear more about your promise." He looked at the horizon, where the sun was still hiding behind a curtain of clouds. "My wife loved the sunrise," he said quietly. "Every morning, she would drag me out of bed, even when it rained, just to see the first light touch the rooftops. I used to complain. I said, 'It's just the sun. It'll rise again tomorrow.' But she always said, 'Maybe. But we won't get this sunrise again.'" He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "When she passed away, I thought I'd stop coming. But I remembered what I told her on her last morning. I said, 'I'll meet you here, every day, just like always.' It wasn't a grand promise, just a small one. But it's the only thing that still makes my day feel right." As he spoke, I realized something simple yet powerful. Love doesn't disappear when a person is gone. It lingers in the habits they've left behind, the rituals we repeat, the little things that keep them alive in memory. That man wasn't just keeping a promise to his wife, he was keeping a promise to his own heart. To stay faithful. To stay kind. To remember, and maybe that's what we all forget when we give up. Not the big goals, but the small promises we once made to ourselves. That he turned to me and said, almost whispering, "It's easier to live with pain than to live with broken promises." I didn't say anything. Because sometimes, silence understands better than words. Love that outlasts time. There's something deeply human about keeping a promise when no one's watching. It's not about duty anymore, it's about love wearing the shape of loyalty. As I stood beside that old man, I felt something shift inside me. The world suddenly looked softer, quieter, like Copenhagen itself had paused to listen. That he told me his wife's name was Anna. She was the light in every ordinary day, he said. She made coffee too strong, hummed songs out of tune, and believed every moment could be a memory if you looked closely enough. His eyes glistened, but not from sadness, more like gratitude that love had once visited him. We watched the sun rise slowly over the tiled rooftops, spilling gold across the icy street. The air still bit at our faces, but it didn't matter. There was warmth here, the kind that doesn't come from temperature, but from meaning, and that's when I understood, the strongest promises aren't carved in stone. They live in repetition, the small, invisible choices that we make every day. To wake up. To show up. To stay kind. To remember. It made me think about all the times I had promised myself something. To study English daily, to stay patient, to keep going, and then let those promises fade because life got too busy. But maybe the truth is simpler, life will always be busy. The question is whether we can keep something sacred in the middle of it. In that moment, I realized that the old man's promise wasn't about mourning. It was about continuing. About saying, love doesn't end. It simply changes form. Maybe that's why his eyes, though wrinkled with time, still carried peace. Because when a promise outlasts time, it becomes something greater than memory. It becomes meaning itself, and meaning, unlike people, never dies. The lesson hidden in routine. The next few days, I kept returning to that bus stop. Not because of the story, but because of what it revealed. There was something deeply powerful hiding inside that man's simple morning routine. Every day, at the same hour, he stood quietly, breathing in the cold air, waiting for a sunrise that looked almost the same as yesterday. Yet, somehow, each one meant something new. In Denmark, people value calmness. Life moves slower here. You can see it in the way they sip their coffee, ride their bikes through the mist, or stop to pet a stranger's dog on the street. There's no rush, no loud urgency. And maybe that's the secret, the beauty of repetition done with intention. Routine isn't boring when your heart remembers why you're doing it. That old man wasn't trapped by habit, he was freed by it. His daily promise gave him direction, rhythm, peace. He didn't need motivation, he had meaning, and that's what most of us miss when we try to learn English, or anything, really. We chase excitement, we want fast progress, we expect fireworks. But real growth hides inside quiet consistency. Like brushing your teeth or brewing morning coffee, small actions that build a different kind of strength, reliability. Scientists even have a name for this, the habit loop. When your brain connects a small cue, like time of day or location, to a repeated action, it stops being effort. It becomes identity. You don't try anymore. You are the kind of person who does it. Just like that old man wasn't trying to keep his promise. He was the promise. So maybe we don't need to be extraordinary. Maybe we just need to show up, quietly, one sunrise at a time. Because the world doesn't reward intensity, it rewards consistency, and sometimes, the most ordinary routines are where the deepest love, learning, and peace are hiding. When English feels the same way. That morning, as I watched the sun slowly melt the frost from the benches, I thought about how learning English is strangely similar to that man's promise. You start with excitement, new books, new words, new energy, but somewhere along the way, it fades. The grammar feels endless. The pronunciation feels unfair. The results feel invisible. And one morning, you simply stop showing up. But here's the thing. The English language doesn't vanish just because you took a break. It waits. Patiently. Like that sunrise waiting to be noticed again. That I realized that the reason many of us give up isn't because English is too hard. It's because we expect it to love us back instantly. We treat it like a race, not a relationship. But English, like love, grows through patience. You don't fall in love after one conversation, and you don't master English after one lesson. You keep showing up, even when it feels the same. Think of it like this. Every time you listen to an English story, you're keeping a promise to your future self. The version of you who will one day understand without subtitles, who will speak without fear, who will think in English naturally. That version of you is waiting, and just like the old man's wife, that promise deserves your presence, not perfection. In Denmark, there's a word, hygge. It means a kind of cozy happiness, the quiet joy of small things done with love. Learning English can be hygge, too. When you listen slowly, repeat softly, smile at your mistakes, that's warmth. That's growth. So don't rush. Don't quit. Just keep your small promise. Because English, like the sunrise, will always rise again tomorrow, waiting for you to meet it halfway. Why motivation fades, and habits stay. Let's be honest, motivation is a liar. It shows up with fireworks and vanishes the moment things get boring. That's why most people quit. They think they've lost motivation, when in truth, they never built a system strong enough to carry them through the quiet days. Science backs this up. Your brain is wired to avoid discomfort. It loves pleasure, predictability, and reward. That's why scrolling on your phone feels easier than repeating English sentences. But there's a trick. When your brain starts seeing English not as a task, but as a habit, it stops fighting you. Here's how it works. It's called the dopamine loop. The first few days of doing something new, your brain gives you little bursts of dopamine, a feel-good chemical, for every small win. But after a while, it stops giving the same reward unless you've connected that action to identity. You must stop saying, I have to study English, and start saying, I'm the kind of person who studies English. That tiny shift changes everything. Because your brain doesn't argue with who you believe you are. Think about that old man again. He didn't need motivation to stand in the cold. His body simply knew, it's morning, and I go to the bus stop. It was automatic. His promise had become his pattern. When you build a habit around your English, like listening to one slow story each morning, reading one page before bed, or speaking out loud for 5 minutes, you're telling your brain, this is who I am. And your brain listens. Motivation may come and go, but habits? They stay. They become invisible guardians of your progress, quiet, loyal, and steady. So don't chase motivation. Build rituals. They're stronger than willpower, kinder than pressure, and infinitely more lasting than excitement, because, in the end, it's not motivation that teaches you English, it's the promise you keep showing up for. The promise you can make today. So here's the part that matters, your promise. Not a dramatic one. Not, I'll study 3 hours a day, or I'll become fluent this year. No, just a small, gentle promise. One you can actually keep. Something like, I will spend 5 minutes a day listening to English. That's it. 5 minutes, because 5 minutes doesn't scare your brain. 5 minutes is friendly, believable, doable. And once you start, your brain begins to trust you again. Every day you keep that small promise, you rebuild something far more important than skill. You rebuild self-trust. Think about how powerful that is. Most people don't fail because they can't learn English. They fail because they stop believing their own words. They've said, I'll do it tomorrow, too many times. But you? You can change that, today. You don't need the perfect accent, fancy courses, or expensive tutors. You just need consistency, the kind that comes from quiet faith in yourself. Like the old man who keeps standing at that bus stop, you too can build your own ritual. Imagine this, every morning, you make tea, put on your headphones, and listen to one short English story. You don't rush. You don't judge. You just show up. After a week, something shifts. English no longer feels like pressure. It feels like peace. Psychologists call this the identity effect. Every repeated action becomes evidence for who you are. After enough days, your brain doesn't say, I'm trying to learn English anymore. It says, I am a learner. That identity becomes unshakable. So, make that promise now. Whisper it if you have to. 5 minutes a day. Just me and English. Keep it tomorrow. Keep it next week. And one day, you'll look back, fluent, calm, smiling, and realize that this tiny vow changed everything, because sometimes, the smallest promise is the one that saves us. When a vow still matters. The last time I saw the old man, the sky was glowing orange, that kind of soft light that makes everything feel like a memory. He was there, as always, scarf neatly folded, eyes fixed on the sunrise. I greeted him, and he smiled. Still here, he said. And somehow, those 2 words carried the weight of a lifetime, still here. Still keeping his promise. Still choosing love over forgetting, that moment taught me more about learning and living than any book ever could. Because whether it's love or language, promises are what keep us alive inside. They remind us that even when no one's watching, even when progress is slow, we still matter. The world keeps telling us to be faster, louder, better. But maybe what we really need is to be faithful. To stay. To keep showing up for what we said we would do, not because it's easy, but because it's right, and that's the beauty of it. A small vow, repeated every day, becomes something sacred. The old man didn't stand there to prove anything. He did it because that promise kept his heart human. It gave meaning to the quiet hours and dignity to the ordinary days. Maybe your promise, 5 minutes of English, 1 page of reading, 1 spoken sentence, will do the same for you. Not because it makes you perfect, but because it makes you present. As the bus drove by, I waved goodbye. He nodded once, his smile framed by light. And for the first time, I understood, keeping a promise isn't about holding on to the past. It's about carrying love into the future. So, when you whisper your small vow today, mean it. Keep it. Let it shape you. Because when a vow still matters, you still matter.